today. Thank you, David and Steve, for joining me. So Steve, could you first introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Steve Bristol, and I'm the Assistant Head of School for Enrollment Management and Strategic Planning at the Hun School of Princeton in Princeton, New Jersey.
Great. So I'm sure many people have heard of Princeton, New Jersey, if they've had the pleasure of visiting or not. But could you describe the environment of Princeton and what does that look like for Hun itself too?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is probably one of our greatest features is our location. You know, being in a town like Princeton that is so culturally diverse, so intellectually vibrant, an hour from New York City, an hour from Philadelphia. The school's campus is in a suburban neighborhood and some beautiful homes around us and big trees and things like that. But it's a short 10-minute walk for our kids into downtown Princeton, where there's, you know, great shopping and coffee shops and restaurants and obviously Princeton University, which we're able to take advantage of, and kids can go to art exhibits and musical concerts and sporting events and things like that. So the opportunity for kids to get off campus and do a lot with us is tremendous.
Awesome.
Thanks. And just following up, Steve, and you mentioned you're only an hour outside of the city of New York City. Are kids able to access the city on weekends or with school trips?
Yeah, we go in there quite a bit, whether it's to the museums or, again, concerts and things like that. A lot of our classes will go into the city. It's about 45 minutes on the train if you can get an express, and you're in and out of there pretty quickly. But it's just, especially for our international families, it's such a treat to be so close. And it also makes travel to us a little easier for them because the number of international airports that are near us.
Thanks.
That makes sense. So could you tell us a little bit more about Hun's community? Like, how would you describe the Hun community and culture?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's because one of the challenges I think for families that are looking at schools is we all brag about our communities and we all talk about community in this very broad sense, but you know, different schools have a different feel, and sort of figuring out how is my community different from a community at another school and things like that, I think can often be a real challenge for families. The way I describe our community is, and it'll sound kind of trite, kids are really nice here. They treat each other well. They're really respectful. The community includes kids, faculty, staff, the people that work in the dining room, the people that clean the facility. They're all part of the Hun community, and sort of everyone has a comfortable relationship with each other. And I think that idea of feeling comfortable is really foundational for the education we offer, because we want kids to stretch themselves and to challenge themselves. And I think it starts with, if you feel comfortable on campus, now you're going to raise your hand and ask questions in class. You're going to try out for the play for the first time. You're going to try a new sport. All of that comes out of the community and that foundation of just feeling comfortable here.
Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned sort of the community feel and how what's a little unknown fact that some of our viewers might not know about the Hun School, maybe a little surprising or a little known fact about Hun?
We get a lot of questions about our name. You know, Hun's sort of an unusual name, and some cultures doesn't have the greatest connotation either. But we were founded by a Princeton math professor named Dr. John Gale Hun. And we were started as Dr. Hun made himself known because he was a great tutor, and he helped future Princeton University students prepare for college by tutoring them in math. And as I understand it, business got really good, and he turned his tutoring business into a school, and we kind of grew out of that. But we've also still trace ourselves back to Dr. Hun and the idea of tutoring being, you know, meeting kids where they are, individual attention, sort of moving them forward with a personal relationship and we still pride ourselves on that today. And, you know, and that goes right back to Dr. Hun, who admittedly, I think was a tough love kind of a teacher, but really set a foundation for us that we do like to kind of trace ourselves back to consistently.
So for the students who probably had more time away from campus last spring than they wanted to, what do you think was a food that they may have missed in the dining hall at Hun when they get back?
We get a lot of, number one, food's great, huge range, you know, appreciate that there are different diets and cultural issues around meals that we want to always be respectful of. But when it comes back down to it, we're talking about teenagers and they like French fries and ice cream. And we have an ice cream machine in the dining hall that is running 24/7, I think, and get a lot of comments about that.
Nice.
And do you have any, are there any traditions amongst, with food or just in general that you had mentioned, Dr. Hun? Are there any traditions that you'd like to share about Hun with us?
What we do a lot, and this speaks to international families in particular, is, I mean, we invest a lot of time and energy and thought into teaching cultural competency in kids, which is a fancy way of saying, hey, we want you to get comfortable with people that are not like you, and that where you can meet people from different parts of the world. We've got kids from 30 countries and 18 states. We want you to see that as a cool thing, not a scary thing. And so within our boarding program, we have sort of cultural Wednesdays, they call them, where kids from different countries will sort of, it's very informal. It's not a presentation, but they'll host an event with the other boarding kids that usually involves food from their home country, music, because we know if you put those two things out, kids will show. But then they'll also talk about home and show pictures of their house and their bedroom at home, and to have kids realize that, you know, different countries, you're still just kids. And once you start sharing food and music, and these have become big hits, and we'll have our day students often come back on Wednesday evening if there's a particularly interesting show coming, and it's a lot of fun. And again, very informal. It's designed to be fun, and the kids really, really have embraced it.
Nice. Is anything new and exciting going on at Hun that we should know about?
Yeah, we've been sort of knocked off our game a little bit by COVID, but a year ago, prior to this past school year, we just started a program we call Next Term. And essentially what we did is we shortened our school year by 3 weeks. So our second semester now ends the first week of May. And then all of our kids will take a single course for 3 weeks. And it'll be experiential, it'll be collaborative, it's going to be project-based. There's generally travel involved. And so it's an intensive class. That's all they do for 3 weeks. They're in groups of maybe 12 to 14. And a couple of examples, we had a group that studied thrill rides. So they studied roller coasters. And what they did is they looked at it in terms of the math, the physics, the engineering, plus the psychology. You know, why do you pay money to terrify yourself? And went and researched roller coasters, went and tested a few, and then came back to campus and designed 3 models of real roller coasters. And they did the math. So they figured out how steep the hills need to be and how steep going back up it needed to be. And then they presented their models to the CEO of a amusement park company and sort of tried to, you know, get them in as the next new roller coaster design. Another one is we sent a group of kids to Ghana. We sent a group of kids to the US-Mexican border to study immigration. We have a class that studies US national parks, and they went out to Yellowstone National Park. And again, looking at it from different academic perspectives, from business, from literature, from science and national parks, the ecology, the politics behind it, all of that. So we have about 25 different classes that kids can choose from, all really kind of fun and courses we've designed ourselves. And then you can do that in your first 3 years. And then for your senior year, you get to design your own project. And it's whatever your passion is, you can design it yourself and do it yourself. And so instead of ending school with everybody kind of tired and begging for summer to come, we tend to end it now on a really high note, and kids are doing these really fun, interesting, real life courses.
Wow, those sound great. I love the that roller coaster. And you mentioned that kids were going down to the border, and also you mentioned the fire. So it's obviously a lot going on in the world right now, and on boarding school and college campuses. Is there something you'd say has been a sort of hot button issue right now, or has any of those programs led to something going on campus that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, all of it. What's been neat about the next term classes is that they are kind of real life based. They're not theoretical, and this idea of, studying immigration, for example, by speaking to the people on the ground on both sides of the issue, whether they're a border guard or an immigrant. Like all independent schools, we're spending a lot of time talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that cultural competency group I mentioned earlier is a powerful group on our campus. These are people that are really committed to changing the way in which people treat each other and the way in which people see each other. And it'll be a foundational piece of this school year going forward, absolutely.
Right.
So who are the teachers at HUN, and what sorts of roles do they play in students' lives and success there?
There's a pretty broad range. Like most boarding schools, you want teachers that fundamentally just like being around kids, whether that's in the classroom, in the hallway, in the dormitory, they're coaches, they're leading activities. They're on campus with their own families, and you have a relationship with your teachers that's very different from a traditional day school situation where you're coming in at 8 and leaving at 4, and there's a different relationship. You're hanging out with your teachers on the weekends and at night, and you're in their homes and you're baking cookies or watching sporting events on TV and having pizza, but there's a personal relationship where your teacher's kids and their dogs and all of those kinds of things that make this sort of an atmosphere different. So our faculty are people that want those kinds of relationships with students. They're passionate about their academic disciplines, and they're incredibly bright people, but they're also really down to earth and really like just hanging out with kids and being part of the community.
Right. And on that, Steve, do most of your faculty coach a sport?
Or lead some kind of co-curricular program. Okay. So maybe they're doing the robotics team, maybe they're leading the orchestra or the theater. They're all doing something in addition to their classroom responsibilities. So, someone might teach 4 math classes, be an assistant coordinator with the robotics team, and help out with the school newspaper kind of thing. And so they're all engaged in school in a pretty broad way. Right.
And then as a follow-up on you mentioned the academics, and obviously it's a rigorous environment with college preparatory environment, and you're trying to get the kids to perform well. How do you balance that with support in terms of, knowing who can do what?
Yeah, I mean, independent schools like HUN are, 100% of our kids are going to go to 4-year colleges, and in today's world that comes with a fair amount of pressure, and we work pretty hard to both help ease the pressure, but also teach kids how to manage it. And we have a really an outstanding sort of health and wellness program that underlies everything. All of our kids have advisors that kind of help them through academics and social challenges. We have grade level deans that are sort of monitoring the whole 9th grade or the whole 10th grade. We have a team of counselors that works with kids on more personal issues. But in general, and again, going back to Dr. Hun, we're a place that really supports kids as individuals and wants to teach them to manage pressure and manage challenge and manage failure sometimes in a healthy, positive way, and to see those things as opportunities to grow and improve.
Nice. I was wondering, you mentioned the next term as kind of a new initiative that came out last year. Are there any other types of specific opportunities or programs that you guys have, either connected to Princeton or something else unique to Hun?
Yeah, a couple ideas. One, and this has come, it's been interesting. This is a byproduct of COVID and having to be remote in a lot of ways. But it's something that we've talked about saying, oh, we should just do this all the time now, is we've got someone that's in charge of what we call community engagement. And what she does is she comes up with little activities during the day that kids can just sign up for at any point. So maybe there's a poetry group. Maybe there is a group that just goes for a walk. Maybe there's a group that likes to play ultimate frisbee or something like that, where it's not a formal club that meets every week or anything like that. It's kind of every day there's a couple of these activities that are designed to make it possible for kids that are virtual and Zooming in to be part of a lot of them, and a way to kind of just hold our kids together and let them have a little fun together, let them do something interesting. We have a teacher that did a cooking class the other day. And so whether students were on Zoom or in the room with them, he's just talking through, and that was just a one-off. And he'll probably do that again in a couple of weeks, but it's these informal chances to just kind of dabble in something that sounds kind of fun and sounds kind of interesting. You don't have to make a year-long commitment to it or anything like that. It's just a chance for us to pull different kids together around a topic so that you meet some different people that maybe you share an interest with. And it makes our school day about more than just logging in for a Zoom class, and that there's still this community that is still engaging with each other and having fun and laughing together. It's been pretty neat. And in terms of in Princeton, we're in there a ton. Normally, for a host of things, this area is great because whether you want intellectual stimulation and you want to go to the university for a lecture or something like that, or you're an outdoorsy person that wants to go canoeing on the Delaware River or hiking in the mountains, we've got that sort of equally distant apart. And so again, the location's been a really powerful thing for us because there's a lot for different kinds of kids and for different interests and to try some new things.
Right. One question, Steve, about we were talking earlier about feel and the community. And where do you think you fall with kids in terms of competitiveness amongst each other, and then just competitiveness for the Hun school to try to do well representing the school, whether it's academically or trying to make the varsity basketball team or getting the lead in a play? And how do the kids work together or not?
It's really interesting for a school in Princeton, New Jersey that has high academic standards and competitive athletics and things like that. We are not an internally competitive place at all. And I think our kids would sort of look at you like, I don't know what you mean. Part of that, I think, comes, we have such a broad range of kids. They aren't all fighting for the same things. And so there's a little more space to be yourself. And as I said, to kind of be comfortable and try some new things. And we celebrate people that are beginners at things here or that do multiple things. We have 300-pound football linemen who are in the winter musical, and so because that's just it was a neat opportunity and he'd never done it before and he wanted to give it a try. It's that kind of a place where you're not put into a sort of a hierarchy of competition. The school kind of celebrates those kids that want to do a lot of different things, and the social groups tend to relate on a very level playing field, I would say.
Great.
You mentioned you have students from all over the place. How do you guys support international students specifically?
Yeah, well, we've got a director of our international student program, and she's been here for 30 odd years. So we now are getting second generation international students, kids whose fathers were here, 30 years ago, who know Mrs. Summers and called her mom when they were here. And so it's a riot when the families come through to visit, and, the dad's hugging their old teacher and the kids are there. So she's been doing this a long time, and has a really, really wonderful understanding of the challenges that come with being an international student. It is, I say all the time, I'm in such awe of the bravery of kids that will travel around the world to go to school. And what I think we do really well is respect that that's a hard thing to do. And so we're right from minute one, we're going to be there to support them, to engage with them, to connect them with other kids, to respect that there's times when they just want to hang out with kids from their country too, and that's okay. And but also make sure that our kids are mixing and learning from each other throughout their time here. It's got a nice feel to it. It really does.
Well, it sounds like an ideal spot. So perhaps you could share with us a few of the qualities maybe that make for an attractive candidate for those listening who would like to apply to the Hun School.
Yeah, it's a good one. And I get this question a lot, and it's a little bit, it's sort of a veiled question of kind of how do I get in and what are you looking for? And my standard answer is, and I say this very genuinely, I'm looking for great kids who work hard. Some of those kids are going to be really, really bright, and they're going to be in the top of our classes, and some won't be. Some are going to be just great kids who work hard, who won't get all A's, and that's okay. We're still, we're not pretending everybody's going to be at the top of the class. There's not enough room up there for everybody. But what we're looking for more than anything is, how do you treat other people? Do you do the right thing? Are you respectful of people? And do you work hard? And those are things that we believe kids have control over. You have control over whether you're a good person, and you have control over whether you work hard. You don't have control over whether you're brilliant or not. That just comes. And so we've got a top 20% that I think are some of the most amazing kids in the world, but they're also good kids and they work hard. And then the other 80% are good kids who work hard, who have different abilities and different talents. But we're always going to start with sort of character and work ethic as our foundational pieces in the admissions process. And then that translates into the school, where if you fill a school with really nice kids, well, you get, there's your community, and then your community creates confidence, and that confidence creates opportunities for kids to really grow and change while being here.
Well, yeah, thank you. That was, it's helpful. You cut to the chase of what you're looking for. So it doesn't have to be too veiled, I guess. But I guess the follow-up question then is, if you're looking for great kids who work hard, how do you identify that in the application process, and what are you actually looking for?
Yeah, the application process is pretty traditional, and it's the same. We use the SAO sort of standard application online, and it's kind of a common application. So we'll ask kids to fill out an application, answer some questions, send us their transcripts, teacher recommendations, and then to take the SSAT, the entrance test. We're going to look closely at, what do your teachers say about you? How do they describe you as a student? Are you curious? Do you like going to school? Do you like learning? Those are things that we're going to try to flesh out of the process early on. Part of our process, like most schools, is, we're going to interview the kids, and whether, now by Zoom, but in person or Zoom. But part of that conversation is trying to find out, how does this student approach school? How do they engage with other people? How do they handle disappointment and failure? We're all going to struggle at a time while they're here, and we want to make sure that they've got the tools and the skill set to overcome some of those tough days that happen and can bounce back, and we're there to support it. But we're going to look through, we're really going to try to kind of flesh out that nuance of attitude, effort, character in all aspects of the application process.
And so with that, Steve, should we rip up the SSAT and the TOEFL and just, or do you still require those?
We do require them. And I, I'm laughing as I say it. I don't think standardized testing is a perfect predictor of success by no means, but it is the one tool we have to sort of compare kids on a level playing field. So where it's really helpful, if students coming from a school we're not really familiar with and we don't know their grading scale, the testing helps us put their grades into context a little bit. And the TOEFL's important, and while we have an ESL program and can support kids for whom, English is still relatively new, we don't want to bring a student in whose English isn't at a level where they can find success here. And that really is what my job is to identify kids that'll contribute to the school and be successful. And so I want to use all the tools at my disposal to make sure this is a good fit. I respect that these are kids and I want them to come here and do well and be really happy and enjoy the experience and get the most out of it. And to do that, you want to make sure that they have a foundation that sets them up for that success.
So 120 and a 99% are not necessarily needed. We could
not necessarily. I don't mind them if it's a good kid and they work hard.
Of course. So I'm curious, what role does the interview play in your process? And also with that, specifically for students like those from mainland China, do you guys use Verican or other sorts of filtering in that initial evaluation?
Yeah, we do use Verican, and it's a nice way for us to sort of get a first impression of kids and to begin to evaluate English and things like that. Like I said, to see if this makes sense and if this will be a good fit for them as a student in a place where we think they're going to be successful. The interview for us is a biggie. We want to, it's where we're really going to dig in and try to figure out, is this a nice kid? And, how are they going to be in the hallways here? And how are they going to make people around them feel? I jokingly say all the time that kids are contagious. So, they're good kids create more good kids and they infect each other with their character. And so we want to make sure we have a critical mass of those good kids. And I want to, use the interview to get to know them. As we sit down to evaluate applicants, the first thing that we will say about any applicant is, did you like them? Is it a nice kid? And we're going to start there. And if they don't kind of pass the nice kid test, then all of the A's and 99th percentiles and 120s on the TOEFL won't make any difference. We're going to start with, hey, did you like them? And we're sincere in that.
And to that, Steve, is there a question that usually, reveals something and the kids will you'll say, that's a Hun kid right there in the interview process? Or is it just sort of over the course of an interview that
it varies a little bit. And you touched on something that I always sort of admittedly will jump on a little bit is there isn't a Hun kid, and what I like about them is that they're different. And, folks ask me all the time, kind of, what's the profile you're looking for? And I'm like, there isn't one. The worst thing that could happen to us is that suddenly all of our kids were the same. I want our kids to be different and be comfortable with difference and all of those things. One of the questions I'll pursue with kids a lot, generally the kids we're interviewing have been successful in school. They're good students. And I'll often ask them how much of that success do they think comes from their natural ability and how much of it comes from, how hard they work. And it opens up a nice conversation with us about kind of the difference and how you can, success at Hun is more predicated on how hard you work. And we think that, there's a lot of really bright kids that struggle because they aren't working hard enough. And we have some kids with less ability who are really successful because they work really hard. And so we like to get into that conversation with all the kids we interview because it speaks to one of our core values.
That's a very candid answer. Thank you. It's not an easy question, so thanks.
No. Well, so I think finally, to wrap up our conversation, do you have advice, Steve, for families and students who are embarking on the boarding school application process?
Yeah, it's one of the, I think often families and kids think the process is all about, and because we've designed it this way, it's designed to help me learn about the student. And I think it's equally important that the family learn about the school and to really ask us hard questions and to dig in, because for this to be a successful fit, it has to work both ways. It's not so much, not everybody that I think that I want to come to Hun is going to be a good fit. You know, those families have to kind of dig in on us a little bit and inspect us a little bit, and you know, they know their kids better than we do, and want to make sure that this relationship goes both ways. So I encourage families to ask questions, to dig in on those things that are important for their child's success, whether that's, you know, a challenging curriculum or support or geography and, you know, what's in our community, all of those things that we're trying to communicate, but we don't always know if every family gets the message. So where they're feeling questions, to ask them, to push back on us and interview us a little bit. And I think that helps us increase the potential for success when kids come here. Both sides say, boy, this is a good fit. Then I think we've all done our jobs well.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Steve.
My pleasure. Thank you both. I really appreciate it and enjoy the conversation.